Hey everyone, welcome to the Leader's Edge, your path to personal and leadership growth. I'm your host, Steve Steele, alongside my co host and partner in leadership, Ernie DeCumos. And as certified speakers, coaches, and corporate facilitators, we're dedicated to bringing you powerful principles to fuel your leadership journey and personal growth. Now, whether you're an entrepreneur just starting out, a new leader taking the reins, or a seasoned pro looking to refine your skills, well, this show is for you. We'll be diving deep into personal growth strategies to help you strengthen your mindset and leadership abilities. But before we jump in, a huge shout out goes to all of our amazing listeners. Thank you so much for joining us each and every week. We wouldn't be here without your incredible support. Now, let's get down to business and help you unlock your full potential. Hey, Ernalita, partner, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, partner. How are you doing today? I know we just had a
Oh,
little gremlin. You want to
yeah.
share that really quick?
Oh, okay. We're getting ready to go on air like 3 minutes before we go on air, and all of a sudden my computer decides to lock up, and so I had to reboot, do all this extra stuff. So it kind of goes stressful for a few minutes there, but I'm good now. So we'll see how it goes. If I get lost, though, everybody knows I'll find you. Just know to hang in there with
I'll find
me.
you. Yeah, that's kind of scary, partner. I'll find you. Okay, so today I would love to introduce our guest today, partner. Can I do that?
Absolutely, please do.
Awesome. So, our guest this morning is the founder of Curis Consulting, where she transforms workplaces into environments people never want to leave. With over 27 years of experience as a registered nurse and a deep understanding of organizational development, she has a unique approach that blends the science of human behavior with practical workplace strategies. Her expertise lies in fostering psychological safety, nurturing leadership, and enhancing communication to create thriving, people first cultures. She has collaborated with organizations at all levels, helping leaders and their teams build workplaces where employees are not just satisfied but truly fulfilled. A stepmom, wife, daughter, and dog mama, she enjoys a cup of tea and calls Vancouver, British Columbia, her home. She is passionate about helping others live fulfilling lives, believing that when people feel valued and connected at work, they create a culture of thriving individuals and unstoppable teams. Everyone, please help us welcome Miss Michele Thomson to the green
Hey,
room.
Michelle. So glad
Thank
you're here
you.
today. So glad you're here. Now, Michelle, you're
Thank
kind of
you.
out of town right now, aren't you? You're like traveling right now. So we got you in some other part of the world. We don't even know where that is right now. But yeah,
I
you're
Most people would
traveling
think
around.
this is fairly north in British Columbia, but I would say it's actually only halfway up the province. But I'm halfway to Alaska.
Halfway to
Oh,
Alaska. That's a long ways from Texas. I can tell you that.
yeah. And California.
California. Yeah. Well, today, Michelle, we're going to dive into some leadership principles that I really enjoyed. We did our content build. We talked about some different pillars. You called them pillars when we talked about them of leadership. And you have 7 of them. We're going to kind of try to dive into all of them today a little bit. But when you talk about 7 pillars of leadership, and we've heard all kinds of different people give different kind of leadership points and leadership strategies and different things like that. What makes the 7 pillars of leadership different?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I would say that what makes mine different is that this is from 27 years of experience, where when I started my leadership career, I had no idea what I was doing. Like most leaders who start, most people are hired into leadership positions because their
Mm-hmm.
employers know they're competent and that they can
Mm,
fulfill targets that need to be fulfilled to hit bottom lines. They are not typically hired because they're good, they have great people skills. And a
mhm,
lot of employers just think that they'll figure the leadership piece out. And what we know now, and what a lot of the research tells us, is that organizations that invest in their leaders with leadership development and communication skills actually build exceptional teams and they have very little turnover. And so this really comes from 27 years of trial and error on my part, figuring out
mhm,
what works, what doesn't work, and combining that with the way we're hardwired to connect. And
yes.
I've
Mm-hmm.
done all the hard work, so you don't have to.
Oh,
That's
that's
good.
beautifully said. Spoken like a registered nurse for sure.
There you
Spoken.
go.
doing the hard work so you don't have to. And I love that concept. And I do agree. A lot of times there are certain, people who are placed on the positions, but not knowing how to lead.
Mhm.
Some people are placed on the positions because they perform well. So they perform well as an employee, but not as a leader. But because of that performance, they were placed on the positions. So let's go ahead and dive in, Michelle. Do you mind sharing us the first pillar out of those 27, seven,
I was
rather?
going to say, my goodness, I got a lot to make up if we've expanded to 27. Um, yeah, so the first one that I came up with really, I think, is there you don't have to do these in any specific order, but I think the first one really came from an understanding of the concept that we can build trust and connection with people when they know and like us. And the only way that they can learn to know and like us is if we get out to where our people are that we're supporting, we're leading, we're serving.
Mhm.
And so my first recommendation is, get out of your office if you have one and go to where your people are and connect with them. And don't connect with the same people every day. Push yourself where it doesn't feel comfortable. Connect with 2 to 3 people every day and look at what their body language tells you when you enter a room. Do their shoulders hunch forward? Do their eyes drop down? Do people kind of suddenly rush into corners of the room and not want to make eye contact? If that's the case, then that's really just telling you that maybe you're getting a few things wrong and there's some different things that you can do. But if people look excited to see you and they come over and they say, "Hey, it's so glad to have you here," that's typically an indication that they enjoy having you there because they see you as someone who is supporting by just being in the room. And sometimes the best leaders we have are the ones that are the quietest. It's really their presence brings a sense of support. And I'm not here to tell you what to do necessarily, but I will help guide if you ask the question. So, I think it's really just about showing up in a way that makes people feel I'm here to help. I'm not here to direct traffic.
Yeah.
Mm,
And that is that, and I love that. Not here to direct traffic, because oftentimes that's what leaders are seen to have done. And I've noticed even in the organizations that I am affiliated with, that oftentimes leaders are put in position because they can do a good job in their role of whatever their team member role is. How they can make that happen, and then maybe they're really good at a particular function or process that but they don't necessarily make it necessarily a good leader, because
mhm.
leadership is really about influence and leadership is about people, right?
Mhm.
So building a trust factor there. Can you talk a little bit about that? To building a trust factor?
Yeah, so I believe that leaders have two primary functions. It's to keep people safe, both physically and psychologically, and it's to build trust. Like really and truly, I think. And I think that we've made leadership way more complicated than it needs to be. At the end of the day, it's an exchange of energy between two people. The way that I show up to any interaction with another human being is going to be matched. If I show up in a bad mood or I raise my voice at someone, they're not going to thank me for that behavior. They're probably going to look at me and say, "What is wrong with you? Don't yell at me," or it's not going to be a great interaction. But if I show up and say, "Hey, thanks for coming to work today. What does it feel like to be able to do the work today? Or do you have everything you need to be able to do your job easily? It might not be faster or better, but do you have what you need to do to be able to do your job well?" And I think that the safe piece is really where we ask those hard questions without the
Mhm.
fear of getting a response that we think that as leaders we won't be able to fix. And I grew up from a place of you could never admit that you were wrong, and you should never tell people that you don't know. And I tell
Mm.
everybody that is, if anyone is telling you that, don't listen to them. The worst thing
Yes.
you can do is to try to fake it till you make it, because people know that you don't know and you're kind of gaslighting them, or you're just giving them this canned response. The best way that you can build trust is to show that you are being vulnerable and saying, "That's a great question. I have no idea.
Yeah.
And I think I know how we can figure this out. So would you be open to coming back and having a conversation with me where we can continue this and we can maybe come up with some strategies and ideas together?"
Oh,
Most people will think, "Wow, that was probably really hard for her to admit she didn't know that." But now I trust the fact that when she doesn't know, she's going to be honest with me and tell me that and ask me to come along for the ride.
Well, can I follow up?
mm.
Let me follow up with this real quick then. Do leaders really have to know everything? about what their team is doing, about what their processes are, about what functions they're doing? Does a leader really need to know all of that? Because I'll be real honest with you. In organizations I've been involved with, it's like if you don't know it as a leader, you're looked down upon.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
and I can't possibly know everything. Even if I've learned it, I may have forgotten it because I don't function in it every single day over and over and over.
Yeah, and I appreciate the question, Steve. I think it's a really good one. And we could probably just spend an hour talking about that. I would say that some of the best leaders are the ones that actually know the least amount of their entire team. And this is why I say this is that several years ago, I was hired into a director position, working with a small team managing occupational health and safety for an organization that had 900 employees. And we were small, but we were mighty. There was like, I think 5 or 7 of us. And I knew nothing about occupational health and safety outside of being a nurse and experiencing that as a user of an occupational health and safety system. And I believe that my team often wondered what was going through the VP of operations head when she offered me the position. But they were the
Mhm.
content experts. And so what ended up happening was our team was
That's right.
so solid and so close because they knew I wasn't there to tell them and to micromanage how to build up content and policy. I was there to help them be able to get that ready so that we could present to the executive committee, so that I could push initiatives forward and be the voice to bring what we needed to bring forward so that we could do the good work to serve the 900 employees in that organization. I wasn't there to tell them how to do their job. They were the experts in that. I was really looking at it from the 3,000-foot view, and they were looking at it at a much more granular level. And so when they
Mhm.
realized that that's not what my role was, it was fantastic and probably one of the best teams I've ever worked with.
And that's empowering as well, right?
Mhm. Very much so. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it gave me a lot of opportunity to go to them and say, "Can you help me understand this process better so that when I'm helping to write a policy, I know where the blind spots are in the rest of the
Mhm.
organization?"
Mhm.
Mhm. And I think it touches on the other pillar that you actually teach about, Michelle, which is humility. Can you
Mhm.
expand on that?
Mhm.
Yeah, one of the other ones is a kind of approaching situations with curiosity and humility. And so for me, humility doesn't mean that I'm lowering myself to someone else
Mm-hmm.
in terms of like, because I think that that word sometimes can be misconstrued. For me, showing up with humility just means that I'm letting the other person know that I have more to learn. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm really showing up with the curiosity to ask big questions. Tell me more about that. I'm curious how you came to that conclusion, even when we sometimes have differing opinions. And so what this does is it just allows for deeper conversations. And as you get into deeper conversation, that opens up the opportunity for greater connection with someone. They get to know you better. You get to know them better. Often you find things where there's similarity and common factors. And so what we want to be doing is what I tell most people is that we are all more alike than we are different. Even the people that we think are very
Mhm.
different from us or have very lived experiences different from us. But when you look at research that's been done worldwide, and most people, even when they come from very different cultural or ethnic backgrounds, a lot of them carry the same core values. We all value family, or we value community and connection with others. And so I think that where you can find those through lines of where you are more alike than you are different, it allows you to continue to be curious and ask those questions from a place of, tell me more. And what this tells
Mm-hmm.
this person is that there's actually nothing in this for me other than to just understand your perspective more. And again, the research tells us we all like to talk about ourselves. So when I open
Mm-hmm.
up the door and give people the opportunity to tell me more about their experience, that builds connection, trust, and makes people feel safe.
Yeah, and if I can piggyback on that, asking them questions, how did you come up with that? It gives them
Mhm.
that
Mhm.
authority, right? It gives them that ownership. Well, I came up with it because of XYZ. And now you're highlighting that effort, highlighting that opinion and that idea. Um,
Yeah.
what does you touched this earlier, Michelle, like authenticity, is that anywhere involved into the 7 pillars at all?
Yeah, I mean, I think that being an authentic leader for me means that I have a clear recognition of my core values. And so the work that I do a lot of it is really rooted in leaders knowing what their personal values or their core values are. It's always shocking to me, and not from a place of judgment, how many people actually don't know what their core values are. And so often that's one of the first exercises that I go through with people that I work with or organizations I work with, is really just kind of identifying what those are. And I have different tools that people can use. So at some point, I know we're going to share contact information, they can reach out to me. But I think that when you don't feel in alignment, it something just feels off. It's generally because there's something there that is bumping up against a core value that doesn't feel good. And that's letting you know there's some sort of misalignment there. So I think it's not just about a fluff word that we use about, oh, like, like, let's just make everything be easy and great and feel smooth. That's awesome. But I think an alignment really is that you can act from a leadership perspective in a way where you sometimes will have to make hard decisions or have hard conversations, but you do it because you know it's in alignment with a value that is a non-negotiable, not because you want people to like you. And this is where I often see leaders get
Mm.
really stuck, is where they're trying to be nice versus being kind.
Ooh,
Mm.
okay. Being nice, being kind. I like that. Can you explain the difference?
Yeah, I can quickly say that being nice is typically when people behave in a way that they act or they have behaviors or they take actions because they want people to like them. So the root of it is, I
Yes.
want you to like me, so I'm going to do this because it will go with the status quo or the general and make most people happy. When you are kind, you will still have difficult conversations or have difficult decisions and do those hard things because you know it's the right thing to do in spite of it being hard. And what the research tells us is that you gain more respect by doing that because people realize that they actually feel safer in your presence because you are not a leader that is flip-flopping all over the place and is inconsistent in your approach. They know that you're rock solid and you're going to make those decisions. You're going to show consistency and fairness across the board because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think looking back in years ago, and of course I've grown since then, but years ago, I think that was me. Trying to be nice, not necessarily wanting people to like me, but I guess maybe so. I mean, maybe in the core of it, maybe it is. I was really, really wanting people to like me, and versus being kind and not being totally honest at the same time. But I will tell you that being authentic as a leader is so important because people can see right through you really, really quick if you're not authentic, and it is so important. I know we only have a couple of minutes here left, but maybe we'll come back to this in a minute. But I
We
thinking
only have
about
60 seconds now.
yeah, I know that thinking about the opportunity thinking about the opportunity to change things a little bit with a positive mindset. Let's come back to that and talk about that a little bit when we come back.
Awesome. Well, I think, partner, you could have ended it already too. We
Oh,
will take a quick break.
you do so
This
much better than I
this
do, Ernie.
this is going by so fast. This is going by so
Yes,
fast.
it really
Yeah,
is.
Michelle just dove into the first, not first three in order, just three of the seven pillars that leaders should do every day. And one of them is getting out of your office and being seen to build trust, the trust factor. Approach life with a positive mindset and opportunity to change things, and approach with curiosity and humility. When we return, we will talk about the four more pillars. On the seven pillars. We will be right back to the Leader's Edge.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Leader's Edge. I'm Steve Steele with my co-host Ernie DeCumos and our special guest today, Michele Thomson. So Michele, we talked a little bit about three of the pillars when we left the last segment, but I did say something that I wanted to talk about the mindset a little bit, an opportunity to change things, because I will be really honest with you, Michele, our younger workforce is really demanding something new from us as leaders.
Mm-hmm.
And so how do we make that change, that mindset and the opportunity to change things with a younger workforce that's coming up, because their demands are so much different than they used to be?
Yeah, like one of the pillars I talk about is kind of showing up with a growth mindset. And I think just what that means is that life is happening, not necessarily to us, but like we're part of that. And in terms of we have the autonomy to make some decisions. And listen, I fully recognize that sometimes life happens and we don't ask for things to happen to us. But I think that when we constantly feel like there's nothing we can do about certain things that happen, it really gets us into this state of mind of thinking that tomorrow is just going to be a repeat of all of the other days before it, and it really then just gets us kind of sucked into this. What's the point if I can't make any change? And I think that why I
Mhm.
believe that's relevant to your question, Steve, is that for the first time in history, we have 5 generations all working potentially in the workplace at the same time. And what we know to be true is that the values of each of those generations in terms of the work and goal setting can look very different. What
Mhm.
is a goal for someone of my mother's era? They would be driven by the concept that you go to you graduate school, you go to university, you get a degree, you go to work, you work hard, you prove yourself, you work long hours, and if you do that, you will be successful. And I think that younger generations are figuring out that that equation doesn't have to be the only equation and the only path, and that there's
Mhm.
other options for them. And so I think that as a leader, it behooves us to be able to understand what are the drivers for each of those generations so that we can leverage that. And when we are trying to motivate and keep people engaged in the workplace, we can ask them, what are the things that motivate you at work? What makes you excited to come to work and to get up and come to work? And I think that for some people, work is a means by which allows them to travel and to have a quality of life outside of work. It isn't to get to the top of the pyramid or to have a job title. For
Yeah.
some people, that will be the reason that they come to work every day. And I think that it's just a recognition that it's not about trying to meet everybody's needs in a different way. It's really understanding that when we come from different generations and different lived experiences, that the work is going to mean different things to us. And when you can recognize that without judgment and say, oh, those millennials, they're all nobody wants to work and they just want everything for easy, and we can get out of that kind of language where we are pigeonholing people and we are generalizing, which is not psychologically safe, then it allows us to have those bigger questions to say, what would be the thing that would motivate you to come to work every day? Why do you want to work only from home and you are not
Mm.
interested in coming into the office? And how
Mhm.
can we
Mhm.
negotiate that
Mhm.
if that's a non-negotiable, right? So it's
Mhm.
really just about, again, asking bigger questions to say, help me understand why this is a non-negotiable for you so that it doesn't potentially have to be a deal breaker.
Yeah,
Right.
and I think part of that is having difficult conversations, right? Part of leadership always, and I think I don't know if you both agree with me, part of being a leader is we have to go through hard conversations.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Like you said, there's 5 generations. The conversations, the difficult conversations will be different as well. How should we approach those scenarios, Michele?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's no easy answer to that because it's just been my experience that to learn to be a good communicator takes a lot of practice, unfortunately, which often means you're putting yourself in uncomfortable situations
Yes.
or situations that might
Oh
feel
yeah.
scary or where there might be conflict. And the more you do it though, and the more you kind of build that toolbox up and you can trust that It's okay if you can't find the words and you don't make a complete sentence that sounds very eloquent, like it came off the pages of a book. And
Yeah.
it's okay. Like, that's fine. That's not normal. Nobody's expecting you to kind of have this perfect vocabulary. But I think that when you feel confident enough to say, I'm actually feeling really nervous right now. So if I stumble over my words, I want you to know that's why. And it's because I know that I have to have a hard conversation that's necessary. And I want to be able to do that with respect. So
Mm.
again, I think it's showing a level of vulnerability without feeling like you're showing your belly and someone's going to use that. So I think for me, that is really recognizing that most people, you can give them the benefit of the doubt and approach a situation with positive intention. I believe that most people come to work every day with the intention of doing a good job. Will you
Mm-hmm.
get the occasional person who's there to not maybe work hard or to kind of create chaos? Absolutely. But the majority of people want to come and do a good job. And again, the research tells us that adults are not unlike children. When we are in an environment where we don't feel safe, we don't behave well. And so when I see
Ooh.
people disengaged and not working and not getting along or fighting with each other, that's one of the first indicators that this is not a safe environment and people are acting out because they don't feel safe. And so,
Okay, let
go
me
ahead.
ask a question real quick. I know I'm interrupting you, but I really need to ask this question. So, is that also include when they don't want to come to work? Because
It can be.
because there are so many times that I the people, especially our younger generation, they really don't seem to really have a plan as far as if they go to work today. It's not a big problem if I go to work tomorrow. But what I think often happens is the workloads get piled up, and other people have to do them. So is it an indication that if they don't come and they're in a trend that they're unhappy with that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it can be a product of the environment. Like maybe they feel that they're being micromanaged or they don't know where the
Hmm.
goalposts sit. Like they don't understand what the expectations and the outcomes are that they're supposed to be delivering on. So the communication is poor. They don't actually know what they're supposed to be delivering on. And I think that sometimes we can pull it back as far as the onboarding process, where when we're interviewing people and we're asking sort of those canned questions, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And why did you apply for this job? And why do you think that you would be a great contributor to the organization? There's nothing wrong with those jobs, but it's also in this workplace, we have a policy where we want you in the office 2 days a week because we believe that when you can engage with your coworkers in a face-to-face way, we have deeper conversations that help us make sure that we're not missing blind spots. Is that going to be an issue for you? It lets the person know this is a non-negotiable for us. So if
Mm-hmm.
this is going to be a problem, like let's have that conversation now. So when those conversations never happen and someone takes the job and figures, oh, I can probably just work from home. And then all of a sudden the rules of engagement change. Now all of a sudden it's like, well, wait a second. This is not what I thought I was subscribing for. So I think it's about really having clarity and clearness around here's the expectation and here's the goalpost. But within that, we want to give you autonomy. We want you to feel
Mm.
like you have the ability to play and to do your job and engage and collaborate and make mistakes without fear of retribution, that we'll see those as opportunities to learn. Um, but there will be some non-negotiables. And if it's not a good fit, we wish you well on your journey. No hard feelings, but this is a non-negotiable for our organization because this is where our core values are rooted.
Mm.
Yes.
And I
And
think it's equally important for people who are applying for jobs to research organizations they're applying for to see, like, do they have their core values listed on their website?
mm-hmm.
Is it in alignment with my personal values? Because if out of the gate, the two of those aren't aligned, this person is going to be someone who disengages probably in the first 6 to 18 months and probably won't want to be working there in 2 years and is probably going to be seeking alternate employment.
I do have a question about that, Michelle, and I love that concept of researching the organization. I have done multiple interviews in just the past couple of months. And every time I ask, have you looked at our website? Did you research about us? And the answer is no. What do
Mhm.
you think is the reasoning behind that? Because it with me, I've always wanted to research the organization because I will be investing my time there, right?
Mhm.
And is their values aligning with mine? Eh,
Mhm.
Do you mind expanding on that of what your thoughts are?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a couple things. I mean, I think that some people want to come to an interview prepared. They have this level of professionalism where they
Yes.
want their employers to know that they took the time and effort, that this position is something I'm really excited about, and I took the time to go research you and learn more about you. And
Mm-hmm.
how can I connect some of those things that I learned about the organization on your website into some of the questions that you might ask me and weave that into my worked experience? So if somebody were to ask me, where do you want to be in 5 years? I might say, well, I noticed on your website that you are going to be expanding into this area. And I would love to hope that with my experience doing this, and this, and if I were to get this position, that in 5 years I would be ready and potentially a candidate to help you grow your business doing this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Right? Like I'm already signing, like, where can we hire you? But now that's not to say that if someone doesn't do that, that's not an employee that's worthy of being hired. But I think then I would ask deeper questions to say, why did you apply for this position? And sometimes it's the market.
Mm-hmm.
The employees know that in some cases employers are looking to fill a warm body into a position, and they don't have to make a lot of effort to get hired into certain jobs. And I think that, to your point, Ernie, that if this is a position that someone is looking at to kind of fill a gap, and it's not
Yeah.
something that they think is going to be potentially a long-term investment, typically we don't put as much skin in the game. And so, what I would be asking them is, one of our core values is this. Tell me what that means to you,
Mm.
and see if there's any sort
Mhm.
of an alignment there, right? And try to give them the opportunity to pull some of that out and help them kind of do that work with you in the moment.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So we talked about the fourth pillar, which is approaching situations with the growth mindset,
Mhm.
and now we're kind of approaching the fifth one, which is really is approaching situations with a positive intention. So how do we relate to each other uh, as far as that's concerned, Michelle?
Yeah, so the positive intention is like kind of like what I was just speaking to, is like, assume that people are coming to work to do a good job, right? Like I think that if we
Hmm.
don't make that assumption and we think that everybody's there, I mean, I hear this a lot from people who are, tired, or if things aren't going well, it's like, why can't people just do their job? Like I'm not asking a
Yeah.
lot of them. And I think that
Mhm.
that might be true, and it's okay to have those feelings as a leader, because often middle managers primarily feel torn between meeting the goals and the needs of, and often it's the bottom line of the organization or their people, and they're torn between which
Absolutely.
Mm.
one do I pick. And so
Absolutely.
it's easy to get stuck in that rut. And I think that's where you dig deeper to start to ask, why might this be happening? Why are people behaving in this way? Is it because we have a process or a policy, or there's something that's forcing sort of that behavior to shift in that direction? It's not to look for blame or to assume blame. It's really to say, I need to get curious to figure out why this is happening. If it's happening because there's no accountability and people think nobody's watching, so I can do this and get away with it. Well, okay, so then let's own that. And now we bring everybody in and say, listen, we got to work
Mm.
together to change this. Like, this is not okay. This is not in alignment with what we think is acceptable or ethical or whatever it is. And so here's how we're going to start to make change around this, but we want your feedback. And so I
Yes.
think that piece is it. And that aligns, I think, with one of the other ones, is that the words that we use matter. And
Mm.
Mm.
so for me, this is a big one around communication and recognizing that when we use sometimes words that are just part of our regular English vernacular, it can make it really, really difficult to recognize sometimes that words like but or should, or like, we'll try to do better next time, even if they're not met with like this positive intention, where it's not meant to hurt somebody with the
Yeah.
intention of like, I'm trying to hurt your feelings right now, it doesn't feel good to be on the receiving end of that. And so typically what I ask leaders to do is just to develop the awareness of when we use these words, because we use them as filler words in the English language, right? Like, I really love being with you here today, but I wish we had more time. Well, you
Mm,
only remember the back end of that. So it kind of sounds like a backhanded compliment. Like, I like this, but. And so what I tell people is just put a period and take the but out. I really
Mm-hmm.
love the time that we're having today. And I wish we had more of it. I'm saying exactly the same thing, but it lands completely different. It's the same thing with try. When I say, well, I'll try to get that done. Are you? Are you really going to try? It kind of assumes that, like, maybe I'm not going to, or I'm giving up before I
mm,
even do it. The better option would be to say, I'm not able to do that right now unless we look at my workload and there's something else we can remove. Then I know I can get it done. Right. And I mean, that's obvious. Nobody wants to be told you should be doing something. It just doesn't feel good. It feels like you're being
yeah.
parented. And particularly in the workplace, we don't really typically want someone telling us like you should be doing this or you should be doing that. It just doesn't feel good. So I think that we can just draw awareness to that, try to avoid using those words or just drop them and just put in a period and make it a new sentence.
I love that concept of
That
it.
is
And
good.
I
That is
think,
good.
yeah, I have heard the should. You're hitting a nerve here. I've heard the should before, and yes, I do agree. When we say should, you should do this. You're like being told, okay, what you're doing is not enough, so you should try something else, right? You should try something else. Um, we've discussed what six so far, and uh, part of being a leader is having to manage your team, right? Managing, taking care of them. And a lot of the things that you've said, Michelle, is mainly focusing on your team, right? It's not focusing on yourself. Can you talk about prioritizing ourselves as a leader? Is that another pillar as well?
It is. It's one of the final pillars, and it's really doing one kind thing for yourself every day and others.
Mm,
And the reason this is important is because I think that since the world as we know it has changed, we hear a lot about self care. And I think that self care really has lost its luster in how we hear it now and how it's used.
yeah.
We think self care is a half day at the spa or going for a manicure or pedicure and all these things that potentially cost a lot of money and they're time
Mhm.
consuming. And I can tell you some days, if I were to go to the spa, I would not be enjoying my time because I'd be thinking of all the things I could be doing rather than, having a
Yes.
back massage. And so if that's not relaxing for you, then it's not self care. What
Hmm.
self care is anything that you do that quiets your central nervous system. And the easiest way you can do that is to just let your body breathe. You don't have to do any
Mm,
fancy breathing. We already know how to do this. If it's safe, you can close your eyes and just take deep breaths. And in 2 minutes, your blood pressure will drop, your respirations will lower, your heart rate will lower, and you will just feel more grounded and more centered. So there's simple things that we can do every single day. Make yourself a cup of tea, read a book every 20 minutes, get up, go for a little micro break. My husband always jokes with me when we go on vacation. I'm the one that's stripping the bed 3 minutes before we're running out the door to go on vacation. And he's like, why are you doing this? And I said, because when we get home from vacation, we're going to love getting into nice clean sheets. And so it's sometimes doing
Yes.
something for your future self, right? It's those things. I pack my lunches for the week on Sunday. I put on a podcast and I batch my lunches. It takes about 2 hours, but that for me now is self-care because it's like, don't mess with that
mm,
time. It's not negotiable. I'm in the kitchen, but I'm doing something that I know is going to make the rest of my week easier. And then doing
yeah.
something kind for somebody every day could just be looking at someone in the eyes to say, hey, thanks for coming to work today. Thanks for, thanks for just being here. Or I know you were not feeling great last week and I hope you're feeling better, but I want you to know that even being here, you're adding positive contribution to the workplace. I mean, that might sound very dramatic, but I think it's really just doing something kind. It can, you can buy somebody a coffee in the line at, wherever you get your coffee. And that's nice to do those gestures, but it doesn't have to have a monetary value to it.
Mm,
And I think that's part of the last piece around the self-care is the last one that I included this past year is what I call the if only game.
Mm,
And the if only game for me is if only I had more time, if only I had more money, if only I had a better job, if only I could have more vacation time, if only I could tell the kids to load the dishwasher properly or tell my husband how to keep his fingers off the front of the fridge. If only, if only, if only. And what it does is it gets us into this ruminating loop in our brain that
mm,
tomorrow is going to be exactly like today and there's nothing I can do. And we just start to feel stuck. And when I hear people say, like, I feel stuck, I can't get out of this funk, usually it's because there's some sort of understory that's being played about if only, if only, if only. And so,
Hmm.
generally, what I tell people to do is just find one baby step that you can do to take action because any step towards something that we want to
mm,
achieve will often just get us out of that kind of like little hump that we need to get out of. And it triggers our brain into thinking, oh, that wasn't as actually as bad as I thought. And I can do this. And now I want to do the next thing. And now I want to do the
mhm.
next thing. And the research shows that micro steps towards a goal actually are better than trying to do these big grand gestures of change. They're more sustainable and people actually adopt them long term into habits and patterns of
Yeah,
behavior when they can just do micro changes.
Wow.
for sure.
Wow.
I
Yes.
do agree. I do agree. Michelle, thank you so much for such an amazing content today.
Yes.
We
Thank you,
can probably
Michelle.
last for another hour on this radio show.
Hmm.
Oh,
It's
Hmm.
you're
kind
both
of
such a joy to be with. I love this so
Hmm.
much. So thank you so much for
Thank
having
you.
me, truly. Yeah.
Thank you.
yes.
Thank you so much as well. I don't know, Ernie, can you, Michelle, hear me? Because I've kind of lost everything. I can't see anybody or anything. So
We
can you
can
guys hear
hear
me?
you. Yep, we
Okay, well,
definitely
good.
can
Well,
hear
good. Well,
you.
so Ernie, you'll have to take us out because but Michelle, I just want to say thank you so much for everything today and what you've done and what you have shared with us about the 7 pillars of leadership. And I know I'm experiencing some of those very same things. And so thank you so very much for the great advice, for the great teaching that you've given us. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you so much again for having me. It's really a joy. Thank you.
Yes, and Michelle, I'm sure our listeners are wondering, what are you currently working on, and how can people reach out to you?
Yeah, so the best place to find me on social media is LinkedIn and all of everything. If you go to LinkedIn, you can find all of my links there. I'm only on LinkedIn now. I gave up everything else. I'm turning into an old lady and I can't figure out the algorithms and
Don't
all the
say
things.
that.
So that's where you can find me. I have a website. Again, everything is there. I think in terms of programs, if people are looking for a workplace program, I collaborated with another amazing Canadian leader who focuses on like burnout and workplace wellness. Her name is Sumana Jetty, and we have a 3-month program called Wellness in Action. That's pinned on my LinkedIn, and we've got ads for that. So if you're interested in that, you can go take a look. And I think that the other thing is I'm always doing bespoke presentations and or one-on-one coaching and working with
Wonderful.
organizations. So if people want to go look, it's all there. You can reach out.
Awesome. Thank you so much again, Michelle. And partner, you want to do the sneak peek next Thursday?
Nick, well, I'm going to have to let you do that, Ernie. So if you don't mind, could you do that for me?
Yes. Next Thursday on The Leader's Edge, we're celebrating our 100th episode with a very bold conversation, being
Yes.
willing to be the villain in someone else's
Oh,
story. Oh, and this is with our friend Miss Erin Marcus, who is a chief strategist and thought leader. We're diving into personal branding, why being fully you sometimes means not being everyone's favorite, which is correlated to what we
right.
discussed today.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as always, Michelle, thank you so much for today. Thank you for blessing us with your time, even though you're traveling. And we wanted to say thank you to all of our listeners and friends because without you, the Leader's Edge would not be possible. We are grateful to have you here and so excited to connect with you next time. But for now, bye.